So we've talked about optimizing images, specifically with JPEG and PNG compression and with GIF compression to some extent. But one of the real powers of working with the GIF format is you can create animation. Oftentimes that animation comes in the way of something like a loading indicator, something along those lines. So what I'd like to do in this video is walk you through a technique for creating a loading icon, then showing you how you can go about saving it as an animated GIF. So to start off, what I'd like you to do is come over to the File menu, and from the File menu, you can choose New. This, of course, will open up the New Document dialog box. I'm going to set the width to 200 pixels, the height to 200 pixels, and the background will be set to transparent. Go ahead and click OK. Once you click OK, the new document is created. What we need to do here is come over and choose the Custom Shape tool. With the Custom Shape tool, you want to come up to the options bar, and in this menu, you should see this little shape right here called Circle Frame. If you don't, in the top right-hand corner, what I would do is just load all the possible custom shapes. But if you come over and choose that shape, you'll then have the ability to draw one out here within the document. Now, in terms of the fill color, it doesn't really matter. We're going to apply a gradient overlay on this shape, so the fill color is essentially irrelevant. I'm not using a stroke color, by the way. Go ahead and click and drag out a shape. Hold down the Shift key to constrain it to a circle. If you want to position it, press the V key on your keyboard, and you can either nudge it around using the arrow keys on your keyboard, or you can simply click and drag. Now that we have this shape in place, what I'd like you to do is come over to the Layers panel, right-click, and in the contextual menu, you can choose blending options. Of course, if you're on a Mac, you can always Control-click. Once you choose blending options, it's going to open up the Layer Style dialog box. What I'd like you to do is come over to Gradient Overlay and select that. Once you check it, you also have to click on it so the options over here change for the Gradient Overlay. So we have a couple different things that we want to do here. First of all, what we want to do is make sure that the blend mode is set to normal. We want the opacity set to 100%. We want to change the appearance of the gradient, so go ahead and click on it to edit the gradient. And we're going to add a couple stops. Go ahead and click once to add a stop, and we're going to change the location to 30%. We're going to add another stop to the right of it, and we're going to change its location to 40%. Then we want to change the color of these stops. The stop at 30% should be whatever color you want this animation to have. I'm going to go with a blue. If you go ahead and double-click on it, it'll open up the color picker. Go ahead and select the blue color or whatever color you want to use and click OK. At that point, you want to come over and double-click this first stop and change it to a really dark gray. What I would do is copy this hex code to your clipboard, Command-C on the Mac, Control-C on Windows, and click OK. And you want to set the other stops to that same color. So go ahead and highlight the hex code that's there and paste the hex code that you have in your clipboard, Control-V on Windows, Command-V on the Mac. And we want to do the same thing with this stop. So we have this looking pretty good at this point. We can come over and click OK. The other thing that we want to do is change the style. We want the style to be set to angle. We have this set up now. If you have preview checked, if you move the dialog box out of the way, you'll see that just a portion of this shape has the color applied to it. The next thing that we want to do is come over and choose Inner Shadow. So again, you want to click on it to activate it and click on it so the section over here changes. We're going to go ahead and set the blend mode to overlay, which means we're going to change this color to white. If you can't get white here in the color picker, you can always type in FFF, FFF, and that's going to give you a pure white. After doing that, you want to make sure that your opacity is set to 100%, and the size is going to be 25 pixels. Finally, we want to change the contour. If you open up this menu, there's an option here called Ring Double. Go ahead and select that. Again, if you click and drag this dialog box out of the way, we have a three-dimensional look to it now with just this section highlighted in blue. So at this point, we have the artwork set up. What we need to do now is animate it. To animate it, we can come over to the Window menu, and from the Window menu, we can come all the way down and choose Timeline. Now, the timeline inside of Photoshop works in a couple different ways. You can work in a more video-based timeline that's reminiscent of programs like After Effects or even Adobe Edge Animate, or you could work with a frame animation, which is a little bit closer to something like Flash. There's no right or wrong way to work here. For this example, I'm going to come over and choose Video Timeline, so I'm just going to click the button, and you'll notice you now have a timeline. In this case, you'll notice we have the Shape 1 layer. If we expand it, we can see all these different properties that we can animate. Well, what we want to animate is the style. To activate the style property, we can click on this little stopwatch, which will enable the keyframe. At that point, we want to change our playhead to somewhere around frame 1 or 1 second. With the playhead there, we're going to come over and make modifications to our layer effect. If you right-click on Shape Layer or Control-click on the Mac, you can come up to the blending options, and then you can select Gradient Overlay. In this case, what we want to do is set the angle to -89 degrees, and then we can come over and click OK. Then we're going to move the playhead to frame 2, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to come over and right-click or Control-click on the layer, and in the contextual menu, we can choose Blending Options. Again, we're going to come over to Gradient Overlay, but in this case, we're going to set the angle to 92 degrees. Go ahead and click OK. Once you click OK, we want to make the animation end here. We can do that by clicking on this little tab that you see here in the top right-hand corner of the timeline. Drag that all the way to the 2-second mark. You can do the same thing with the shape layer. If you place your cursor at the end of it, you get a two-way arrow. Just click and drag this to the left so it ends there. So this is what our animation looks like. If we want to preview it, we have a couple different options. You can click the play button here to see what it looks like. But what you probably want to do is make sure that it's looping if it's not already. In the top right-hand corner here, you can enable loop playback by selecting this option. So we have our animation, and it looks pretty good. How do we save it as an animated GIF? Well, all you have to do is come up to the File menu. From the File menu, you can choose Save for Web. This will open up the Save for Web dialog box. Here I'm in the 2-up tab. With this second section highlighted, you want to make sure that you have GIF selected in this drop-down menu. You can play with the number of colors that you want to use. Down here towards the bottom, you'll notice that you have some looping options. In this case, I'm going to choose Forever, meaning that it will always loop. You can play it here to get a preview, and you can see that the animation looks pretty good. So go ahead and click Save. Once you click Save, a dialog box opens. We can save this on the desktop. We'll save it as loading.gif, and once you save it, you have your animated GIF. One other thing that I'll point out is that this object is against a transparent background. Because of that, when you go to the File menu and choose Save for Web, you'll notice that the transparency automatically carries over. So we do have a transparent background, which means we could place this loading graphic on top of any color background that we need to. The final thing that I'll leave you with is that you may want to trim the overall document. And again, you can do that by coming up to the Image menu, and from there you can choose Trim. In this case, we're going to trim based upon the transparent pixels. We're going to trim away the top, left, bottom, and right. When you click OK, the overall size of the image gets a little bit smaller. So there you go. That's how you can create an animated GIF inside of Photoshop.